flag burning. Donald Trump wants to criminalize flag burning, something protected by the United States Constitution and the Supreme Court for decades. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. And today we're talking about Donald Trump's recent executive order where he tries to criminalize flag burning. And we're going to talk about how and why it's protected by the Supreme Court, by the United States Constitution, why you can't even do this through an executive order, even if it wasn't protected. Brian, what are your thoughts on this?
The president has issued an executive order, I think within the last 24 hours since we recorded this. And what the executive order basically does is it says, first, they want to prioritize enforcement of existing laws. So what they're trying to do is saying burning a flag is like burning anything in public. And if it's illegal to burn it, you can't burn it and it's illegal. We're going to talk about why that's unconstitutional. He actually, the executive order wants to pursue litigation to overturn these decisions, which have been around for a long time. There was a 1960s decision called Brandenburg that involved the Vietnam War. And then the most famous, of course, is, I think it's Johnson versus Texas. That's a Texas versus Johnson 1989 decision that protects flag burning. Conservative majority of the United States Supreme Court. The conservatives have upheld flag burning as an exercise of free speech. And then he wants to criminally refer anybody who burns a flag to either federal or state authorities or local authorities. And finally, he wants to deny or revoke any immigration benefits, such as visas, to anybody who has the audacity to burn the American flag. And he didn't put this in the executive order shot, but he actually went on to say he thinks people should spend a year in jail.
He did say that during the press conference about it. He was babbling on like an idiot, and he did say a year in jail. He said, not 1 month, not 10 years, 1 year in jail. And that is, Brian, we're lawyers and we understand how law is made. That's how laws are made, right? Some crazy lunatic gets up in the Oval Office and says something, and that's how criminal statutes are.
That isn't how laws are made, Sean.
Yeah, that's just wild. I'm going to read a quote, and I think this is important. If there is a bedrock principle underlying the First Amendment, it is that the government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society finds the idea offensive or disagreeable. This was from the Texas v. Johnson opinion in 1989. That's Justice Brennan in talking about why it's so important to protect means of expression that others may find offensive. I mean, the fact that it's so offensive is a reason to protect it, because where do you draw the bounds? It's a slippery slope. If you allow for something that some people don't like to be banned in terms of speech, where do we draw the line?
Well, they don't think the line should certainly be drawn when it comes to ultra-conservative, far-right, neo-Nazi type of speech. They don't believe the line should ever be drawn there, right?
Yeah, the Proud Boys can go out and protest and yell all kinds of crazy shit and, wave swastikas around. That's totally fine. It's free speech. But no, when it comes to burning the flag, that's where they're going to draw the line.
So let's take a quick trip back to law school and constitutional law, which is, one of my favorite subjects in law school was how does the government do this? Well, the first rule is it has to be very narrowly tailored. It can't touch any way whatsoever upon speech. And in doing that, that's kind of sort of what they're trying to do here is say, we're not looking at speech, we're looking at action. We're looking at burning something, whether it's a flag or a piece of paper or a draft card or whatever the case may be, showing my age here. But the problem with that is you then run into something called chilling free speech, right?
Right. That's part of that. That's the analysis, right? You can't chill free speech. This is protected by the Constitution. It may be ugly, it may be painful, but it's something that we provide a protection for. That's just how it works. Because if you take it logically, I mean, where do we draw the line? I keep coming back to that. This is a slippery slope argument. If we're okay with banning that, are we going to get to a point where we ban criticism of Donald Trump? We criminalize anyone who writes an article. We criminalize what we're doing on this channel. Where do we draw that line?
I mean, that's what authoritarian dictators do, right? I mean, I was listening to a news story about North Korea and North Korea trying to open for tourism, which is ridiculous, but they're trying to open for tourism. And one of the concerns there is that outside media may come in because one of the things that the regime has done is protected against any kind of speech that prevented any kind of speech which comes in and criticizes the regime. And that's definitely where they want to go. Now, let's talk about this. Let me give a hypothetical, a couple examples. You take an American flag, you put it in a Molotov cocktail, you light it on fire, it's the fuse. Okay, that's illegal. You have an American flag and you're in the middle of an anti-Donald Trump protest and you're burning the flag to demonstrate your dislike for the current government or whatever the case may be. Then you get arrested for that. Now you are trying to quash speech by arresting somebody for that. And that's the problem with what's called overbreadth and chilling effect of this executive order. Plus, as you pointed out, Shant, the executive order is just that. It's just the president saying what he doesn't like. It's not a criminal act, but he is directing his law enforcement people to go after this.
Well, I think the problem with allowing it to be banned is that it creates or it allows for the government, someone, the lunatic sitting in, now it's the lunatic in the Oval Office, but even if he wasn't a lunatic, it just allows for someone to have discretion as to what is too offensive to express, right? Let's put everything aside. The other examples, not a Molotov cocktail, not shouting fire in a crowded theater, which is kind of the classic example we use in law school to illustrate what type of speech can be criminalized or banned or punished. No, but let's say it's purely burning of the flag. Well, why do why do they want to ban it? Because they find it an offensive symbol. Okay, I understand, and let's say I agree that that's an offensive act, that's an offensive symbol. But then we're letting people decide which speech, which expression is offensive versus not offensive. That's the whole problem behind it. And soon, let's say it turns into criticizing just America in general. We start maybe banning some of that. And then it starts encroaching into criticizing one political party. And we start saying it's okay to ban that. And soon you're right. It's a step towards authoritarianism. It's a step towards a dictatorship. And hell, maybe that's what he wants. I mean, he did say this week something like some people are saying they want, maybe people want a dictator. He had some stupid line like that.
No, we don't, Donald. Look, I'll give my final thoughts on this topic, Shant, in that, and rather, long-winded as it may be, is that first of all, this attack on anyone who's not here, who's not a U.S. citizen, will lose their right to be in this country, even if they're legal. Patently unconstitutional and illegal. Just because somebody expresses a view, and I'm assuming people here are legally, they have a green card, they have a student visa, whatever the case may be. You can't cancel it because they're making some kind of speech that's already being hotly contested and litigated. It violates existing Supreme Court precedent. Now, he may think at this time that he's got a 6-3 majority and he could get 5 votes. Maybe. I mean, he certainly could get 2 votes I can think of right off the top of my head, right? But even them, the conservatives on the court have traditionally been almost more free speech oriented than the liberal branch, because they know that, it has to be applied across the board. It not only that, but it's looking for selective enforcement. So it's because somebody's protesting something against the United States, which necessarily today means they're protesting Donald Trump. It's selectively enforcing it, right? And trying to design a law that says, well, you just can't burn things in public. Well, yes, you can under most circumstances, particularly if it's a proper protest. You can't rip a flag off a federal building and burn it, because that's taking government property. But if you bring your own flag and you burn it, it happens. And we may not like that. And that's the whole point of free speech in our society. That's what we're trying to protect. So yes, it is patently un-American to suggest that burning the American flag on its own should be illegal. So that's my final thought. As usual, Shant.
I agree with you. That is the whole point. Flag burning is an offensive, ugly, and raging thing in most circumstances. And that's exactly why the First Amendment protects it. The First Amendment isn't about, freedom of speech isn't about the easy stuff, what we know should be protected. It's about the things that piss us off, that make us furious, that offend us. It's about making sure everyone has the ability to express their speech, no matter how much it pisses somebody else off. If the flag stands for anything, I think it's that. It's exactly that. So this does come down to that. I think the Supreme Court will protect this right. It will protect free speech in general. And I still have faith in that system. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. If you like this content, hit that subscribe button. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.